ever walk into a room and just like feel the energy, like
Yeah.
before you even know what's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
We're doing a deep dive into empathy today,
Right.
but not just the, that's sad kind of empathy.
Hmm.
You guys requested a deep dive into what it really means to be an empath. And let me
Yeah.
tell you, the sources you sent are fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's more than just understanding someone's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's about experiencing those feelings almost as if they were your own.
Whoa.
One of the sources described it. They said that empaths can sense these subtle shifts in someone's mood
Huh.
just by being in the same room.
Really?
They compared it to like picking up on the faintest tremor before an earthquake.
Wow, that's a powerful image. And I think it highlights that kind of dual nature of this ability, right?
Hmm.
Like empathy is something that I think we as a society, we value it. But these sources really get into how being an empath really impacts every aspect of your life, the good and the bad.
Yeah, and it's almost like their emotional antennas always switched on,
Always on.
picking up on these subtle cues that most people would just totally miss.
Really?
And while that makes them incredibly compassionate and understanding, it can also lead to sensory overload.
I bet, especially in emotionally charged environments.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One source even compared an empath in a crowded place to a phone trying to connect to a million Wi-Fi signals at once.
Oh my gosh.
Just overwhelming.
That would be overwhelming. And this constant influx of energy, especially negative energy,
Yeah.
that can lead to what they were calling empathic fatigue.
Oh, absolutely. And it
It's
goes
nice.
beyond just feeling tired.
Really?
Yeah, empathic fatigue, it can manifest physically and emotionally.
Oh, wow.
So you can have symptoms ranging from headaches, insomnia, anxiety, even depression in some cases.
Wow. So it's like their emotional energy is a battery that's constantly being drained without being recharged.
Exactly.
And this is where I think it gets even more complex, right?
Yes.
Because the sources you sent, they highlighted how a lot of empaths really struggle with setting boundaries, prioritizing their own needs.
Absolutely. And it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Empaths are naturally drawn to helping others.
Yeah.
It's in their nature to offer support and comfort. But this constant giving can leave them feeling depleted and emotionally exhausted.
Yeah, I can see that.
One source even mentioned a study that found a strong correlation between high levels of empathy and susceptibility to burnout,
Interesting.
particularly in caregiving profession.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And compound the issue, a lot of empaths, they feel guilty about prioritizing their own needs.
Really?
They worry that saying no or setting boundaries makes them selfish or uncaring, which couldn't be further from the truth.
So they end up stuck in this cycle of giving and giving and giving until they're completely drained and then they can't show up for themselves or anyone else.
Exactly. And it's like that oxygen mask analogy on a plane. You have to take care of yourself first before you can help others.
That's such an important point, and I'm really glad you brought it up because self-care for empaths, it's not just about bubble baths and face masks, right? It's about survival. It's about recognizing that their well-being is not selfish, it's essential. It's like they need almost like a whole new toolkit for navigating the world
Right.
that recognizes their unique needs and their unique challenges.
Mhm.
And one of the things that really struck me, like going through all these sources that you sent,
Yeah.
was this emphasis on self-care.
Yeah.
For empaths, it's not a luxury.
Right.
It is absolutely crucial.
It's about recognizing that their energy is a finite resource. It's not this endless well.
Right.
And just like we wouldn't expect our phone to run, without it ever being charged.
Right.
You can't expect an empath to thrive without taking those intentional steps to kind of recharge their emotional batteries.
Yeah. So it's not just about avoiding burnout. It's about actively creating a life that supports their well-being.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, what specific practices did our sources recommend for empaths to cultivate that sense of balance and self-care?
Well, one thing that kept coming up over and over again was the power of nature.
Interesting.
Several sources, they actually cited studies that showed how even brief exposure to nature can lower stress hormones.
Wow.
It can reduce mental fatigue, even boost creativity.
Yeah, there's something about being in nature that's just like grounding, right? Like it filters out the noise and chaos.
And it doesn't have to be this, week-long retreat into the wilderness.
Or, yeah.
It could be short walks in the park,
Yeah.
gardening, even just taking a moment to appreciate the beauty of a flower. Those little things can have such a profound impact on an empath's well-being.
It's about finding those pockets of peace and stillness throughout the day. Another thing that really resonated with me was the importance of setting boundaries.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's tough for
Yes.
anyone,
Yeah.
but especially, I imagine, for empaths who are just, they're wired for connection.
Right. It's so true. Learning to say no to requests, to protect your time, protect their energy, that's crucial.
Yeah.
One source described it as building like an invisible shield
Oh,
to
interesting.
prevent them from absorbing other people's emotions too intensely.
It's about recognizing that, their empathy is a gift.
Right.
It's not an obligation. They don't
Exactly.
have to give until they're empty.
It's about, finding that sweet spot between being there for others and honoring your own needs.
Yeah.
And, another thing that the sources talked about was the importance of cultivating supportive relationships,
Of course.
surrounding themselves with people who understand and validate their experiences.
So important. Having that sense of belonging, of being seen, of being understood for who you are, that can make a world of difference. Did they offer any insights into what those supportive relationships might look like for an empath?
Yeah, one thing that really stuck out to me was the emphasis on open communication.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one thing to have friends and family who are like sympathetic,
Right.
but it's a whole other level to have people who actually get it, who get the empath experience.
And who respect their need for solitude, which is so important.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because empaths, they often just need that time alone to recharge, to process their emotions, to reconnect with themselves.
Yeah, it's almost like they have, this extra sensory muscle that needs a break.
Right.
After being flexed all day, you can't be on all the time, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's what I'm hearing in a lot of these sources is just this idea of like, not being overwhelmed by it, but understanding how to manage this ability.
Absolutely. And recognizing that, while empathy is a natural inclination for some people, it's also a skill that can be developed.
Interesting.
One of the articles even cited a study where they found that people who practiced mindfulness, simple mindfulness exercises,
Okay.
for even just a few weeks, they showed a measurable increase in their empathy levels.
That's really cool. So even if someone like doesn't necessarily like identify as an empath, they can still cultivate their capacity for it.
Exactly.
That's really neat.
It's like, learning a new language or playing an instrument. The more you practice, the more fluent you become.
Right, right.
And just imagine, like, the positive ripple effect if we all, if more people actively worked on strengthening those empathy muscles.
Right. A world with more understanding, more compassion. I think we could all get behind that.
Absolutely.
But, going back to folks who identify as empaths, I imagine there's this tricky balance between, acknowledging the challenges, but also celebrating the strengths.
Absolutely. And that's something that, all of these sources really highlight is the importance of reframing that sensitivity, not as a burden to be endured, but as a source of incredible strength and, insight.
It's not about suppressing it, it's about harnessing it. I
Exactly.
think that's really cool.
Imagine, like, being able to walk into a room and instantly sense what others are feeling, not to get overwhelmed by it, but to actually use that information to offer genuine support and connection.
Wow.
Like, that's the potential we're talking about here.
That's amazing. And it's such a good reminder that being an empath isn't just about feeling for other people, it's about using that ability to connect with them on a deeper level. So as we're, kind of wrapping up this deep dive here, what would you say is like the most important takeaway for, our listener who requested this, especially if they really resonate with that empath experience?
I think the message is, embrace your empathy,
Yeah.
honor your sensitivity, and never underestimate the power of your own self-care.
Yeah.
Because it's not selfish, it's essential.
It's like you've been given this incredible ability to feel deeply, to connect, profoundly with the world around you.
Mm,
Don't be afraid of that power, but remember to recharge yourself, to replenish yourself along the way.
well said.
And to our listener, we hope this was insightful.
Absolutely.
We hope it was validating.
And remember, you're not alone.
Yes.
There's a whole community of empaths out there who understand your experiences.
Who can support you. Exactly. Exactly. So to our listener who requested this deep dive, we hope you found it insightful, validating, and maybe even a little empowering, right?
Absolutely.
And if there's one final thought we can leave you with, it's this. What is one small act of self-care you can do for yourself today? Maybe it's taking a walk in nature, writing in a journal, or simply saying no to a request that feels draining. Whatever it is, make yourself a priority. Your needs matter. Your well-being matters.
He does.
And the world needs your empathy, but only if you're taking care of yourself first.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.